I set the table the same way I always did. Plates in their places, forks and spoons lined up, and a casserole still warm from the oven. Dinner was supposed to bring us together, the way it did years ago when my son was little. Back then, he used to run to the table, smiling and hungry. But this time, he didn't sit. He stood there, looking at me with hard eyes I could barely recognize. And then, with a voice full of anger, he shouted, "Go beg on the streets, you beggar!" The words hit me harder than any slap could. My hands shook. The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. I could not believe what I was hearing. This was my son, the boy I had carried, raised, and given everything to. I had gone without sleep for him, gone without food for him, worked myself sick just to give him a better life. And now he called me a beggar? The casserole sat on the counter, untouched, cooling down just like all the love and care I had poured into him for years. And I have to ask you, from the deepest part of my broken heart, how did it come to this? How did my own child come to see me as less than nothing? Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on future videos. When I think back to the beginning, it always feels like another lifetime. I was a young woman then, holding a baby in my arms, believing love would be enough to keep us safe. But love was not enough. His father left before our son's first birthday. One morning he was there, and by the next, he was gone. No goodbye, no note, no explanation. Just gone. I stood in our small apartment with unpaid bills on the table and a crying baby in my arms. I remember whispering to myself, "It's just you and me now." I made a promise in that moment, a promise that I would give this child everything I could, even if it cost me everything I had. And it did. The years that followed were not easy. I worked double shifts, first at the diner, then cleaning offices at night. There were nights when I came home so tired that my legs shook and I could barely hold him. But I did. I never let him see me fall apart. Sleep became a luxury. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, worrying about rent, about food, about the kind of future he would have. Many times I went without meals so that he could eat. I remember stirring soup and pouring the bigger portion into his bowl while telling him, "Mama isn't very hungry tonight." The truth was, I was starving, but his full stomach mattered more than mine. I worked and saved for his school. I wanted him to have what I never did, opportunities, choices, a chance to be somebody. When the time came, I paid $40,000 for his private school tuition. $40,000! I could have bought a car. I could have fixed up our home, but I put it all toward his education. I told myself, this is not a waste. This is an investment. One day, he will thank me. And when he got sick, I remember those days like a shadow that will never leave. He was rushed to the hospital, tubes and wires all around him. The doctor said he needed treatment that would not be cheap. $15,000. I signed the papers without a second thought. I didn't care how many extra shifts I had to work, how many nights I would come home too tired to even eat. What mattered was that he lived, that he was safe. I told myself, a mother does not count the cost when her child's life is on the line. Years later, when he was grown, he wanted to start a business. His voice was so full of hope, so full of dreams. I remember him sitting at the kitchen table drawing out plans, telling me, "Mama, this will change everything. I'll make you proud." My heart swelled with pride just hearing him dream. When he said he needed money to make it happen, I gave it to him. $60,000! Every penny I had managed to save from years of working and pinching pennies. Money I could have kept for my retirement, for a little bit of peace in my old age. But I gave it all to him. Because in my mind, his success was my success. His dreams were my dreams. If he built a future, then maybe all the nights I went hungry would finally mean something. But the business failed. He came home one day, shoulders slumped, eyes empty. He didn't say much, just that it didn't work out. My $60,000 was gone, but I didn't say a word of blame. I cooked his favorite meal that night, hoping to ease his pain. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We cover wounds, even when we're bleeding ourselves. Through it all, I kept giving, not just money, but myself, my time, my health, my peace of mind. I was always the one to step in, always the one to fix the mess, always the one to make sure he stood tall even when I was crumbling. I thought that was what love was. Sacrifice. To give and give until you had nothing left, and then to keep giving more. Every dollar I gave him felt like I was planting a seed for his future. Every meal I skipped felt like proof of my love. Every sleepless night was a brick in the foundation of the man I hoped he would become. I didn't see that with every sacrifice. I was also teaching him something dangerous, that my love had no limits, that my pockets had no bottom, that my body could carry endless weight. I was teaching him to take, even when I had nothing left to give. Still, I told myself it would all be worth it. One day he would look at me with gratitude. One day he would say, "Mama, I see what you did for me. I see what it cost you." That hope kept me going year after year. But at that dinner table, everything broke. The boy I had carried through sleepless nights, the man I had emptied my pockets for, the child I had chosen over myself again and again, looked me in the eyes and called me a beggar. A beggar. In that one moment, all the years of sacrifice felt like ashes in my mouth. All the nights of hunger, all the extra shifts, all the bills paid and debts carried, they all turned into a sharp blade that cut straight into my heart. That is the story of how we got there. That is the story of why those words hurt more than anything I have ever felt. Because they did not come from a stranger. They came from the very person I had given my life to. A week passed after that dinner. A week of silence. A week of me staring at the walls, hearing his words again and again in my head. "Go beg on the streets, you beggar." I tried to busy myself with chores, with cooking, with little walks around the block, but nothing helped. Every quiet moment became a battlefield in my mind. One side of me whispered, "He didn't mean it. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he was tired." The other side shouted, "No, he meant it. He looked you in the eyes and said it." I was still carrying that wound when the phone rang. It was his number. For a moment, my heart lifted. A foolish hope rose inside me. Maybe he was calling to say sorry. Maybe he had thought about it and realized how deep he had hurt me. I picked up the phone and I waited for those words I had been longing to hear. "I'm sorry, Mama." But instead, his voice was soft, smooth, almost sweet. "Hi, Mama," he said in a tone I hadn't heard in a long time. He asked me how I was, if I had eaten, if I was feeling okay. My chest tightened because for a second, it felt like my boy was back. The boy I raised, the boy who used to kiss my cheek and say, "Thank you, Mama." Then, just like a cold wind blowing through an open door, he said it. "Mama, I need some help. It's urgent." The air left my lungs. I sat down because my legs felt weak. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, listening as he explained about the money he needed. He spoke quickly, as if the more words he used, the less I would notice what he was really saying. Money, again. I wanted to scream, "Didn't you just call me a beggar? Didn't you stand in my kitchen and tell me I was nothing? And now you come back acting kind because you want more?" My thoughts ran wild. I remembered the tuition I paid, the hospital bills, the failed business, the endless nights working for him, the meals I skipped, the clothes I never bought for myself. And now here he was, asking for more, as if nothing had happened, as if those words had never left his lips. Inside me, a storm was raging. Part of me wanted to give in, like always. That part whispered, "He's your son. You can't let him suffer. If he needs it, you must help." That voice was the old me, the mother who gave without question, without limit. But another voice, a new one, rose from deep inside. A shaky voice, trembling but determined. It said, "No, enough. He cannot treat you this way and still take from you. If you give again, he will never stop." I sat there, holding the phone, my hands sweating. My lips opened, but no words came out at first. My heart raced so fast I thought I would faint. Then, finally, I said it. Just one small word, but heavier than all the years of sacrifice behind me. "No." Silence. On the other end, he didn't speak right away. I could almost feel his surprise. He had never heard that word from me before. Not once. When he finally spoke, his tone changed. The sweetness was gone. The sharp edge came back. "What do you mean, no? You're my mother. You're supposed to help me." His words stung, but I held my ground. My voice shook, but I repeated it. "No, I can't. Not this time." I wish I could tell you I felt strong in that moment. I didn't. My whole body trembled. My stomach felt sick. I thought I might cry. Saying no to my own child felt like tearing out a piece of my heart. But at the same time, deep inside, I felt something else. A flicker of strength. A tiny light I hadn't felt in years. It was the light of a woman who finally said enough. He argued. He begged. He turned angry. He said things like, "You've always helped me before. What's different now? Don't you care about me?" Every word was a knife, but I refused to let it cut deeper. I told him, quietly but firmly, "I care about you. I have always cared about you. But I cannot keep giving when you only take." He hung up on me after that. The sound of the click echoed in the room, louder than any shout. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear, tears streaming down my face. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. My chest hurt like it was splitting open. But under all that pain, I felt something else. The faintest taste of freedom. For the first time, I had chosen myself. For the first time, I had put a boundary between my love and his demands. It terrified me, but it also saved me. That day, I learned that no is not a word of hate. It is a word of survival. And though it broke my heart to say it, I knew I had to, because if I didn't, there would be nothing left of me to give it all. That night, after the phone call, I sat alone in my small living room. The lights were dim, and the silence pressed heavy against my chest. I tried to breathe, but every breath felt sharp, like broken glass. I had said no. The word kept ringing in my ears. I thought it would give me peace, but instead, it broke me open. When the house grew quiet and the night settled in, I finally let go. I cried. Not gentle tears, but deep, heavy sobs that shook my whole body. My hands covered my face, and the sound of my own crying filled the room. It wasn't just sadness. It was grief. The kind of grief that comes when someone you love more than life itself shows you how little they value you. I cried for the years I had lost. I cried for the nights I stayed awake while he slept peacefully. I cried for the meals I skipped so he could eat, for the shoes I wore until the soles tore while he had new ones, for the way I worked myself sick just to pay his bills. And now, in return, he called me a beggar. The insult itself cut deep, but it wasn't just about the words. No, it was more than that. It was about how invisible my love had become. All the sacrifices, all the little choices, all the money, all the years, they had turned into nothing in his eyes. My love was unseen. My sacrifices were forgotten. That truth hurt worse than the insult. As I sat there crying, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, but beneath it, I felt a hard, cold clarity. For the first time, I said to myself, "No more." I whispered it first, like a secret. "No more." Then I said it louder. "No more." I stood up, wiped my tears, and went to the drawer where I kept old papers. Bills, receipts, letters, bank statements, all stuffed together over the years. Normally, I hated looking at them. They were reminders of struggle, of exhaustion, of the endless cycle of giving. But that night, I pulled them out and spread them across the table. I wanted to see. I needed to face the truth with my own eyes. One by one, I gathered the evidence of my sacrifices. The tuition payments, $40,000. I saw the canceled checks, the receipts from the school. I remembered the long hours I worked just to cover that bill. The hospital bills, $15,000. I found the statements with the hospital's name printed at the top. I remembered the fear I felt as I signed my name, not knowing how I would pay, only knowing that I had to. The business loan, $60,000. I stared at the bank slips, the wired transfer papers. I remembered handing over my savings, believing in his dream, believing in him. And then there were all the little things, the smaller amounts that piled up over the years. Car repairs, rent help, groceries, new clothes, birthday surprises. I wrote them all down one by one, every memory of me reaching into my wallet, every time I said, "Don't worry, Mama will handle it." When I finished adding it all up, my hands shook. The number stared back at me like a cruel mirror. Over $150,000. $150,000. That was my life's work. My blood, my sweat, my tears, my health, my time, my dreams, all poured into him. And what did I get in return? Not love, not gratitude, not respect. I got insults, I got demands. I got a son who looked me in the eyes and told me to beg on the streets. The realization hit me like a blow. This wasn't love anymore. This was exploitation. I thought back to every time he smiled sweetly before asking for help, every time he wrapped his words in kindness only to pull money out of me. Every time I told myself, this is love, this is sacrifice, this is what mothers do. But no, love is not taking without giving back. Love is not using someone until they are empty. Love is not turning your mother into a machine that spits out money and comfort while her heart breaks. I had mistaken exploitation for love. I felt sick realizing it. I felt angry at him, but also angry at myself. Angry that I had allowed this for so long. Angry that I had taught him it was okay to treat me this way. Angry that I had believed love meant carrying everything while receiving nothing. The papers lay across the table like silent witnesses to my pain. Each one told a story. Each one was proof. Proof that I had given too much. Proof that I had allowed myself to be used. I stared at the pile for a long time. My tears dried and my breathing slowed. And then In the quiet of that night, I made a promise. Not to him this time, but to myself. No more. No more sleepless nights worrying how to save him. No more skipping meals so he could eat better. No more emptying my pockets while he offered me nothing but insults. No more letting myself be invisible. I am his mother. I will always love him. But love cannot mean destroying myself. Love cannot mean letting him step on me until there is nothing left. That night, as I sat in front of the proof of all I had given, I felt the weight of years finally shift. The chains of guilt, the endless duty, the blind sacrifice, they cracked. Not completely, not all at once, but enough for me to breathe differently. I whispered again, stronger this time. No more. And for the first time in decades, I believed myself. After that night, after spreading the receipts and bank slips across my table and whispering, "No more," into the silence, I knew I had to do more than just say it. Words were not enough. I had lived too many years where words didn't change a thing. I needed action. Real action. But where to start? I was scared. I had never stood up to him before, not like this. For so long, I thought being a good mother meant bending, sacrificing, giving until I was empty. To suddenly stop felt like breaking some invisible law of motherhood. A part of me still whispered, "What if he hates you forever? What if you lose him for good?" Then another voice, firmer, said, "You have already lost him. You lost him the moment he stopped seeing your love and started seeing your wallet. If you don't protect yourself now, you will lose yourself too." That voice guided me. The next morning, I looked up family lawyers. My hands shook as I dialed the number. I almost hung up before anyone answered. But then a calm, steady voice came on the line. "Law Office of Maria Delgado? How can I help you?" Her voice gave me courage. I explained that I needed advice about protecting my assets, about making sure my son couldn't drain me anymore. Saying the words out loud made my stomach twist with guilt. But Ms. Delgado listened patiently. She didn't judge me. She simply said, "Come in. Let's talk this through." Her office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Books lined the walls, and the desk was covered with neat stacks of files. She greeted me with a warm smile, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. I told her everything. About the tuition, the hospital bills, the failed business, the insults. I laid bare my shame, my fears, my heartbreak. She listened without interrupting, her eyes kind but serious. When I finally finished, I waited for her to tell me I had been foolish, that I should have been stronger years ago. Instead, she leaned forward and said softly, "You are not foolish. You are a mother who gave too much, but that doesn't mean you can't start protecting yourself now." Those words felt like a lifeline. She explained the steps we could take, securing my bank accounts, making sure my savings were safe, changing locks and updating property documents so he couldn't claim anything that wasn't his, setting up legal channels so if he ever contacted me about money again, it would go through her office, not through my phone. As she spoke, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because these were serious steps, steps that would change my relationship with my son forever. Relief because, for once, someone was standing with me, showing me I wasn't powerless. When I left her office, I clutched the folder she gave me like it was a shield. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and appointments. I went to the bank and set new passwords, opened new accounts, moved my savings where he couldn't touch them. I changed the locks on my front door, the ones he had a spare key for. My hands trembled as the locksmith drilled and fitted the new metal. But when I turned that new key, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, my home was truly mine. I blocked his number. That was the hardest step. My finger hovered over the screen for a long time. A part of me screamed, what if he calls to say sorry? What if he needs you? What if something happens to him and you're not there? But I remembered Ms. Delgado's words. Protecting yourself is not cruel. It is necessary. So I pressed the button. Blocked. Just like that. And when the silence came, instead of fear, I felt a small measure of peace. Any messages, any demands would now go through legal channels. No more surprise phone calls. No more manipulation disguised as sweetness. No more middle-of-the-night begging. My phone, for the first time in years, belonged to me. At first, the quiet was strange. I didn't know what to do with the free time or the extra money. For so long, my life had been about giving, about fixing, about saving him from one mess after another. Without that constant battle, I felt empty. But slowly, I began to fill the emptiness with new things. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. I had always loved to draw as a child, but life had buried that joy under bills and responsibilities. Sitting in front of a blank canvas again, holding a brush, felt both scary and exciting. My first painting was messy, clumsy, but it was mine. And when the teacher smiled and said, "Good work," I felt like a part of me had been reborn. I started joining my neighbors for afternoon walks. Before, I had always been too tired, too busy, too worried. Now, I found myself laughing with them, listening to their stories, feeling like I belonged to something again. I cooked meals just for myself, not rushed, not just leftovers. I set the table for one, lit a candle, and ate slowly. It wasn't sadness, it was care. Care for me. Something I had forgotten to give myself for decades. Little by little, I began to rediscover joy. One afternoon, while attending a local gardening club, I met Ellen. She was older than me, with silver hair tied back and kind eyes that carried both warmth and sorrow. We began talking, and soon she shared her story. Her son, too, had taken advantage of her, not with money at first, but with endless demands, endless expectations. He had drained her spirit, left her broken. She said it took her years to finally step back and protect herself. Her words were like a mirror to my soul. I told her my story, halting at first, then pouring it all out. She listened the way only someone who truly understands can listen. When I finished, she took my hand and said something I will never forget. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I felt tears sting my eyes, but this time they weren't just from pain. They were from recognition, from realizing I wasn't alone, from hearing another mother say the words I had been afraid to believe. Protecting myself was not abandoning him, it was saving me. In the weeks that followed, I kept repeating Ellen's words to myself. Each time I doubted, each time guilt whispered in my ear, I reminded myself, this is survival. I kept going to painting classes. I planted flowers in my small yard. I laughed with neighbors over tea. I looked in the mirror and, for the first time in years, I saw not just a mother, not just a giver, not just a woman who had been used. I saw me. I don't know what will happen with my son. Maybe he will change one day. Maybe he won't. That part is out of my control. But what I do know is this. I am no longer his endless supply. I am no longer invisible. I am no longer willing to destroy myself in the name of love. With Miss Delgado's guidance, with Ellen's wisdom, with my own courage, I have begun to build a life that belongs to me. And though the road is still hard, I walk it with my head a little higher, my heart a little lighter, because now I know saying no was not the end of love. It was the beginning of survival, and survival, I have learned, is its own kind of love. Love for myself.
It was a gray afternoon when the knock came. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, or maybe a delivery. But when I opened the door, my heart dropped. There he was, my son. And he wasn't alone. 2 of my relatives stood behind him, my sister-in-law and a cousin I hardly spoke to anymore. Beside them stood a woman I had never seen before, holding a clipboard and wearing a badge that read Social Services. My chest tightened. He smiled at me, but it wasn't the smile I remembered from his childhood. This one was practiced, controlled, the kind of smile you use when you're trying to sell something. "Mom," he said, his voice suddenly gentle, almost sweet, "we're worried about you." Those words stung worse than a slap. After everything, after calling me a beggar, after draining me for years, now he stood at my door pretending to be concerned. The woman with the clipboard nodded politely. "We're here to talk about your well-being, ma'am. Your son has shared some concerns." My knees felt weak, but I gripped the edge of the door. Concerns? I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. He went on, his voice dripping with fake care. "Mom, you've been under so much stress, handling money, bills, the house. It's too much for you at your age. We just want to help. We think it would be better if I manage things for you." Behind him, my sister-in-law chimed in, shaking her head with false pity. "We don't want you to hurt yourself with all the responsibility. You should be resting. Let us take care of everything." My cousin added, "It's out of love, you know. You've done enough. You can let go now." The words circled around me, heavy with guilt. Too fragile, too tired, too weak. They painted me like I was broken, helpless, a burden who couldn't be trusted with her own life. And for a moment, just a brief, dangerous moment, I felt the old shame rising in me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't strong enough. Maybe I had made mistakes, given too much, and now I was falling apart. But then, like a flash, I remembered Miss Delgado's firm voice. "You are not foolish. You are a mother who gave too much, but you can still protect yourself." I looked at my son again. His eyes were soft on the surface, but underneath I saw it. Anger, greed. The mask was slipping. I straightened my back. My voice shook at first, but I forced the words out. "No. You're not coming in." The smile dropped from his face. Just like that, the sweetness melted away, and what replaced it was the raw truth, the same contempt I had seen at the dinner table. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and I saw the boy I raised nowhere in him, only the man who believed I was his property. "Mom," he snapped, his tone sharp now, "don't make this harder than it has to be. You need help. You're not thinking clearly." I tightened my grip on the door. "I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." The social worker cleared her throat, trying to keep the peace. "Ma'am, sometimes it's best to accept assistance. Families only want what's best." I turned to her, my voice steadier now. "And sometimes families only want control. My son has not come here out of love. He's come here out of money. He wants what doesn't belong to him." Her eyebrows rose, and for a second, doubt flickered across her face. My son's temper flared. "You're paranoid. Everyone's trying to help you, and you're just being stubborn. You can't handle this anymore. You're making a fool of yourself." The words hit hard, but instead of breaking me, they lit something inside me. No more. Not again. Not ever. I took a deep breath and said, "You called me a beggar. Do you remember that? At my own table. And now you show up here pretending you care?"
"No, you don't get to come in. You don't get to decide for me." His face darkened. The relatives shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other. The social worker tried to regain control of the moment, but the truth was already out in the open. Finally, he leaned closer, his voice low and sharp, like a knife. "If you don't let us in, if you don't let me handle this, I'll make it official. I'll file for guardianship. The court will see you can't manage on your own." For a second, fear ran cold through my veins. Guardianship. Court. The thought of strangers judging me, deciding my fate, it terrified me. But then I remembered all the paperwork I had gathered, the bank records, the proof of every dollar I had managed, every sacrifice I had carried on my own shoulders. I lifted my chin. "Do what you think you have to. I'll be ready." For the first time, it was him who looked unsteady. His mouth open, then closed. He hadn't expected resistance. He hadn't expected me to stand my ground. Finally, he turned on his heel, muttering under his breath. My relatives followed, their false pity slipping into annoyance. The social worker gave me a long look, somewhere between concern and curiosity, then walked away with them. I closed the door slowly, my hands still trembling. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might burst. I pressed my forehead against the wood, breathing hard. But beneath the fear, there was something else. Something I had not felt in a very long time. Strength. For the first time, I had refused him. I had seen through the mask, faced the threats, and not backed down. He wanted to paint me as weak, but I had shown him, and myself, that I was not. And as the silence filled the house again, I whispered into the still air, "You won't take my life from me. Not anymore." After that terrible day at the door, when my son threatened guardianship, I felt shaken. I told Ellen about it while we watered her flowers together. She listened quietly, her face calm, and when I finished, she touched my arm and said, "You need to come with me. There's a group you should meet." The following week, she took me to a community center downtown. The building was plain, just brick walls and folding chairs inside, but what waited there was more powerful than anything I expected. It was a circle of parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents, some with tired eyes, some with soft smiles, but all with a heaviness that I recognized right away. They welcomed me like I belonged before I even spoke. One by one, they shared their stories. A man named Richard told us how his daughter had drained his savings, then convinced him to sign papers that nearly cost him his home. He said he ended up sleeping in his car for months before he finally rebuilt his life. His voice cracked when he spoke, but his eyes carried strength. A woman named Marjorie spoke about her son's gambling debts. She had sold her jewelry, taken out loans, even skipped paying her own medical bills to bail him out. One day, she realized she was close to bankruptcy. With tears rolling down her cheeks, she said, "I thought giving him everything would prove my love, but all it did was teach him to take more." Another parent, quiet at first, finally spoke. Her daughter had taken advantage of her credit cards. When she refused to pay any more, her daughter cut ties. The mother said she almost lost her apartment, but now she was slowly paying down the debt, slowly finding her peace. She looked at me and whispered, "We survive, even without their approval. We survive." Their words were like fire and bomb at the same time. Painful because I saw myself in every story. Healing because, for the first time, I knew I wasn't alone. When it was my turn, I hesitated, My voice shook as I told them about the years of sacrifice, the tuition, the hospital bills, the failed business I bailed out. I told them about the insult at the dinner table. Go beg on the streets, you beggar. I told them about the visit with the social worker, about the threats. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then Marjorie leaned forward and said softly, "Love without boundaries is destruction. We all had to learn that the hard way. You're learning it now." Those words sank deep into me. I had thought love was giving without question, but what I had really done was give without limits until there was nothing left of me. That night, I went home lighter. My house was still empty, my son still distant, the future still uncertain, but something had shifted. I was not a lonely, broken mother fighting in silence. I was part of a circle, a group of survivors who understood. And more than that, I was no longer afraid of the truth, because the truth was simple. Love without boundaries is not love at all. It is a slow kind of destruction, and I was finally ready to stop destroying myself. For the first time in years, I believed I could stand.
It didn't take long. Just 2 weeks after he stormed away from my door, I received the papers. A man in a suit knocked and handed me a thick envelope. When I opened it, my hands shook so badly I had to sit down. Inside, in black and white, were the words I had feared. My son had filed for legal guardianship. According to his claim, I was no longer capable of managing my own finances or living safely on my own. He alleged that I was mentally unstable, reckless with money, and in need of someone, him, to take control. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the papers. My throat went dry, my heart hammered in my chest. My own child was trying to strip me of my independence. I called Miss Delgado right away. When she heard my trembling voice, she didn't sound surprised. Calm, steady, she said, "I told you this was possible, but don't panic. We will fight this, and we will win." A week later, I sat in her office again, the papers spread out on her desk. She read through them carefully, shaking her head. "Here," she pointed, "he says you're mentally unstable. Do you see how vague that is? No doctor's report, no proof, just his word." She flipped another page. "Here, he claims you've been reckless with money. But look at this. He doesn't mention the tuition, the medical bills, the business bailout. Convenient, isn't it? He paints you as careless while hiding the fact that you gave everything for him." I swallowed hard. "And the part about living unsafe?" She said, "That's the oldest trick in the book. They point to age, to being alone, to fear, but we can show you manage perfectly well. You pay your bills, you take care of your home. You're not what he's trying to make you out to be." Her voice grew firmer. "Listen to me. You are not incompetent, and the court will see that." For weeks, I gathered every document I could find. Bank statements, receipts, medical records, school tuition invoices. Everything I had saved over the years. I spread them out across my dining table until the piles looked like the pieces of my life. It was painful. Each receipt was a reminder of another sacrifice. Each bank slip was proof of money I would never see again. But instead of breaking me, this time they gave me strength. These papers weren't just numbers. They were my evidence. They told the story of my giving, my care, my responsibility. Miss Delgado helped organize them into a timeline, a record of not my weakness, but his manipulation. Year after year, demand after demand, I had paid and provided. She said, "This is more than proof of your competence. This is proof of his exploitation." Part of the process was an evaluation by court-appointed professionals. When I first heard that, I panicked.
The idea of strangers testing me, questioning me, deciding my fate, it felt unbearable. But Miss Delgado smiled gently. "You'll be fine. Just be yourself. You are clear, competent, and capable. Trust that." The day of the evaluation, I sat in a plain office across from a middle-aged woman with glasses. She asked me questions about my daily life, how I paid bills, how I managed groceries, how I handled emergencies. At first, my hands shook. My voice was thin. But then I remembered all the years I had done these things alone. The nights I balanced a checkbook by lamplight, the mornings I stretched $1 to feed us both. I spoke with honesty, and as I did, my confidence grew. She gave me small tasks, simple math problems, remembering a list of words, reading a passage aloud. I did them all without trouble. At the end, she smiled kindly and said, "You're sharper than many half your age. You'll be fine." Another evaluator came a week later, this time to visit my home. I gave him a tour. My bills were stacked neatly on my desk, my pantry stocked, my medicine organized. He nodded with approval, jotting notes. When he left, I closed the door and leaned against it, relief flooding through me. I had passed. I knew it. Finally, the day came. I walked into the courtroom with Ms. Delgado at my side. My son was already there, dressed in a suit, his face set in a mask of concern. My heart twisted. How could he look so convincing? To the world, he seemed like a worried child, trying to protect his fragile mother. When his lawyer spoke, the words were polished. They described me as unstable, confused, unable to handle money or decisions. They spoke of concern, of safety, of love. Each word felt like a dagger. Then it was my turn. Ms. Delgado rose, her voice calm but firm. She laid out the evidence, my records, my receipts, my timeline of responsibility. She showed how every supposed reckless decision was, in fact, me covering my son's debts, paying his bills, saving him from failure. She showed the pattern of manipulation, the endless demands. She handed the evaluator's reports to the judge. Both declared me competent, capable, and independent. Then it was my chance to speak. I stood, my knees shaking, my voice soft at first. "Your Honor, I raised my son alone. I worked nights, skipped meals, gave everything I had. I managed every bill, every emergency, every burden. And now he stands here calling me incompetent." I held up a stack of receipts. "These are not the papers of a reckless woman. These are the papers of a mother who gave too much. I am not weak. I am not broken. I am not in need of guardianship. I am in need of protection from him." The courtroom was silent. For a moment, even my son looked uncertain. The judge took his time. The room was tense, every breath heavy. Finally, he spoke. "After reviewing the evidence, the testimony, and the evaluator reports, this court finds the respondent," he looked at me, "to be fully competent and capable of managing her own affairs." I exhaled so hard I almost collapsed. The judge turned to my son. "The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, the court cautions against misuse of the legal system for personal gain." My son's face twisted, the mask breaking. For the first time, his anger showed plainly in front of everyone. But I no longer felt fear. As I walked out of the courtroom, Ms. Delgado squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did it. You're free." And for the first time in years, I truly believed her. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and paper. My shoes echoed on the floor as I walked with Miss Delgado at my side. Every step felt heavier than the last. I wasn't just walking into a room. I was walking into a fight for my independence, my dignity, my freedom. I looked down at my hands. They trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what this day meant. If I lost, my son would control everything. My money, my house, even my choices. If I won, I could finally draw the line he thought I'd never draw. The courtroom was already filled when we entered. My son sat at the front with his lawyer, a sharp man in a dark suit whose eyes looked like cold steel. Around them sat several of my relatives, faces I had once trusted, now twisted with judgment. And then I saw her, a neighbor I barely knew, someone who had waved at me twice in passing. She sat there, ready to testify against me. I took my seat beside Miss Delgado, who leaned close and whispered, "Remember, truth is stronger than lies. Don't let them shake you." The judge entered. The room rose. My knees almost buckled, but I forced myself to stand tall. The other lawyer stood first. His voice was smooth, practiced, dripping with false concern. "Your Honor," he began, "we are here because my client, a devoted son, fears for his mother's safety. She has shown signs of instability, reckless handling of finances, and inability to live alone. Out of love, he asks this court to grant guardianship so he may protect her." Protect me, I thought bitterly. No, he wanted to own me. He painted me as a confused old woman, prone to forgetting things, wasting money, and lashing out in paranoia. He spoke of a mother in decline and a son burdened with worry. Every word was a dagger, twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. The first witness was my sister-in-law. She stepped up, eyes wide with false pity. "She forgets things," she said firmly. "Last month she called me twice in the same day asking about the same recipe. She repeats herself often. It's worrying." I clenched my fists. I had called her about that recipe once because she hadn't answered the first time. Next came my cousin. He shook his head sadly as he spoke. "She's not managing. She leaves lights on, forgets to lock the door. She's lonely, vulnerable. We're scared something terrible will happen if no one steps in." I wanted to scream. Yes, once I left a light on. But who hasn't? Then came the neighbor. She said I looked confused at the grocery store, staring at prices too long, as if I didn't understand. She claimed I once asked her where the bus stop was, when it was right across the street. I bit my lip until it nearly bled. I had asked her about the bus because construction had moved the stop, but she twisted it into weakness. Finally, my son took the stand. His voice was soft, his eyes carefully wet, like he might cry at any moment. "Your Honor," he said, "I love my mother, but she's not safe. She gives away money she can't afford to give. She neglects herself. I just want to make sure she's cared for." Love. He used that word as if it still belonged to him. Now it was our turn. Miss Delgado rose like a storm, her voice calm but cutting. She faced my sister-in-law. "You said she called you twice about a recipe. Do you have phone records to prove this?" The woman blinked. "No, but then this is just your memory. Could it be she called once and you didn't answer, so she called again?" The woman's face flushed. "I suppose that's possible. Thank you," Miss Delgado said coolly, turning away. "You claim she leaves lights on and doors unlocked. How often? A few times? A few? Or once? Can you provide dates?" He shifted uncomfortably. Not exact dates." "So no clear proof," Ms. Delgado pressed. "Just vague impressions?" He stammered. She sat down. The neighbor was next. "You testified she looked confused at the grocery store. Isn't it true the bus stop near that store was temporarily moved for construction?" The woman's eyes widened. "Well, yes, but..." So she wasn't confused. She was responding to a real change, correct? The neighbor's voice grew small. I guess so. Finally, it was my son's turn. Mr. Alvarez, Ms. Delgado said, her tone sharp. You claim your mother is reckless with money. Tell us, who paid your $40,000 private school tuition? He stiffened. She did, but... And who covered $15,000 in hospital bills? She did. And who gave you $60,000 when your business failed? That was years ago. Answer the question, Ms. Delgado pressed. My mother, he muttered. Exactly, she said firmly. She managed money well enough to raise you, educate you, save you. Does that sound like incompetence or responsibility? He clenched his jaw. No answer. The room buzzed with whispers. 2 evaluators testified. Both had interviewed me, tested me, visited my home. She is competent, one said clearly. Her memory is sharp. Her financial management is strong. She lives independently without issue. The second added, I found no signs of mental decline. She is fully capable of handling her own affairs. Their words were a lifeline, steady and undeniable. Finally, it was my turn. I stood, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. Your Honor, I began, I am not here because I am weak. I am here because my son has mistaken my love for permission to take. For years, I gave without question. I skipped meals so he could eat. I worked nights so he could go to school. I paid his debts, his tuition, his medical bills. I thought love meant sacrifice. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. But sacrifice without respect is destruction. Every dollar, every sleepless night, every tear, I gave them freely. But instead of gratitude, I am called a beggar. Instead of respect, I am dragged here as if I am nothing. My son does not want to protect me. He wants to control me. He wants what is mine, not for my safety, but for his own gain. I looked directly at him then. His face was hard, but I saw the flicker of shame in his eyes. I am not incompetent, I said firmly. I am a mother who gave too much, but I will not give my freedom. Not now, not ever. The courtroom was silent. My words hung heavy in the air. The judge asked my son's lawyer if there were more witnesses. He shook his head, clearly shaken. Their case was crumbling. The relatives who had spoken earlier looked down at their laps. The neighbor avoided my eyes. My son sat stiff, his jaw tight. The mask of concern shattered into raw frustration. It was over, and he knew it. The judge leaned forward, voice steady and clear. This court has heard testimony, reviewed evidence, and considered the evaluations. The claims of incompetence are unsupported. The respondent has demonstrated financial responsibility, mental clarity, and independent living. Therefore, the petition for guardianship is denied. I closed my eyes, tears spilling down my cheeks. The judge continued, furthermore, this court recognizes patterns of financial exploitation by the petitioner. While no criminal ruling is made here today, the record reflects serious concerns about his motives. The respondent remains fully independent. My heart swelled. Not only was I free, my truth was on record. As the gavel struck, I felt a weight lift that I had carried for years. I had walked into that courtroom trembling. I walked out standing taller than I had in decades. Miss Delgado squeezed my hand. You didn't just win, she whispered. You exposed the truth. Outside, the air felt fresher, the sky brighter. My son walked past me, his eyes full of anger. But I no longer cowered. I no longer begged. I was not his victim. I was his mother, independent, competent, free. And for the first time, I truly believed I deserved it. The gavel's echo was still in my ears when my son stood up. His chair scraped across the courtroom floor, sharp and angry. He didn't look at me. He didn't thank the judge. He didn't even acknowledge the lawyer who had fought for him. He stormed out with heavy steps, shoulders stiff, jaw tight. For a moment, I wondered if he would turn back, if I would see even a flicker of the boy I once rocked to sleep, the boy I fed with my own hands when money was tight, the boy I carried through life's storms. But no, he left with nothing but rage. And this time, I did not run after him. I did not beg. I did not cry. I stood tall. That evening, I met Ellen and a few others from the support group at a small cafe. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, and for the first time in years, coffee didn't taste bitter. It tasted free. They clapped when I walked in. Ellen hugged me tight. "You didn't just win in court," she whispered in my ear. "You won yourself back." We sat together, sharing cake and laughter. One father spoke about how his daughter had once drained his savings, but how he now ran a small woodworking shop, carving beauty from broken wood. Another mother said she had been left bankrupt by her son, but she now had peace, living in a smaller apartment filled with plants. And me? I was learning that my life didn't have to revolve around sacrifice anymore. For the first time in years, I laughed without feeling guilty. I sat on benches with a sketchbook in hand, drawing the world as I now saw it, not through the eyes of a servant mother, but as a woman with her own life. I filled my home with little things that made me happy: flowers by the window, bright cushions on the couch, soft music playing as I painted. My house no longer felt like a cage waiting to be looted. It was mine, safe and alive. Meanwhile, my son's world began to collapse without my support. Relatives who once sided with him stopped answering his calls when he asked them for money. The friends he bragged to about his sacrifice as a son drifted away once the truth of the court ruling spread. Even his business partners backed out when they realized he had no access to my accounts. The mask of concerned son no longer fooled anyone. What remained was his own greed, naked and exposed. I heard from a cousin that he struggled to pay rent, that he had taken out loans, that he was angry at everyone but himself. Once, I would have rushed to rescue him, but now I let him face the weight of his choices. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, I sat at my easel and realized something. My life was not ending here. It was beginning. Yes, I was still a mother. That would never change. But I was no longer just a mother who gave until she was empty. I was a woman who had fought, stood tall, and won herself back. Ellen's words echoed in my heart. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And survival, I had learned, is also freedom. So, I painted a new canvas that night. Bright strokes of gold and blue. At the bottom, in small letters only I would see, I wrote, "I am free." It has been 1 year since that day in court. My mornings are no longer filled with fear of the phone ringing or knocks at the door. Instead, I sit by the window with a cup of coffee and my paints. The sun spills across the canvas, and I let my brush move freely, telling stories in color. My home is quiet, but it is peaceful, and that peace is worth more than all the money I ever gave away. Sometimes I think back to the woman I used to be, the mother who begged silently for love, who believed that giving until it hurt would earn her respect. She was tired, scared, and unseen. But that woman is gone. Now I am reborn. I am Maria Alvarez, and I finally understand this truth. Boundaries are love. Love for yourself, love for the life you've worked so hard to build, love for the dignity you deserve. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know you are not alone. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace. I would love to hear your stories. Share them in the comments below. Tell me how you found your strength or how you are searching for it now. If my journey touched you, please subscribe and stay with me as I share more. Together, we can remind each other that survival is not just living, it is living free. And until next time, take care of your heart.